The third season of Invincible has just finished, and what did I think? Well, I'll tell you in a moment. Before we talk about this season, I just want to quickly talk about the first two. Season 1 of Invincible, it is fantastic, it was unpredictable, and it all came together in the last two episodes. It was fantastic. I had to give it a 9 out of 10. Season 2 of Invincible was also pretty great. Not as good as the first, but still good. I will say I didn't have the 4-month break in the middle because I started watching a show shortly after the season finished, so I didn't have that problem. The season mostly focuses on the aftermath of Nolan's actions and how Mark is trying to grow as a hero without his father. This led to my favorite episode of the season being episode 4, We Need to Talk. The second half of the season also was great. The finale wasn't as emotionally strong as the first seasons, but it was still a great episode. Engstrom was a good villain, but I'll talk about him more later. Overall, great season, 8.5 out of 10. Now this brings me to season 3. And season 3 was really good. So I'm going to go through it episode by episode. First, I just want to talk about the obvious, and that's the fact that for the most part, the animation wasn't that great this season. Now, I'm not an animator, but that is hard as shit to do. It isn't easy being an animator. You get underpaid, overworked to produce everything. I don't really give a shit about the fact that sometimes the show looked cheap because everything else was just so good. Enough of that, let's talk about each episode. Starting with the first 3 together because they're released together and they kind of blend together in my mind. The first episode, You're Not Laughing Now, was probably my least favorite episode of the season. Could have been that I was just getting back into it, but I just wasn't very engaged. The next episode, however, I Deal With the Devil, absolute fucking banger. We learn about Cecil's backstory and we get the confrontation between Mark and Cecil, which was a pretty intense moment. I generally had no idea what was going to happen while watching it. Episode 3, You Want a Real Costume Right? This focused more on Oliver getting trained in the start of Mark and Eve's relationship. And I really like this one. I don't have a lot to say about this one. The first 3 episodes were a great start to the season. Episode 4, You Were My Hero. Another great episode. The first half focusing on Mark going to the future to find a model. This part is really great. It really makes you wonder about what's going to happen to these characters in the future. This section ends with Mark and Eve having sex. So we cut to Alan and Nolan in prison. And this is my favorite part of the episode. The whole prison break sequence was a great action scene. Alan and Nolan are great characters, so I loved having such a large section of the episode dedicated towards them. But it's such a shame that they don't show up for the rest of the season. Like, you're telling me they didn't have anything of note to do in the last half of the season? But I digress. This was a great episode, but they removed Very, so it's awful, 1 out of 10. Episode 5, this was supposed to be easy. This episode is the lowest rated of the season on IMDb with a 7.5. I think that's dumb. It's not the best episode of the season, but it's still a pretty good and fun episode without anything crazy happening. And I mean, come on, Machine Head's in this one, guys. Episode 6, all I can say is I'm sorry. Another great episode. The story of Powerplex is interesting, and Aaron Paul gives probably the second best guest star performance of the season. Like, I've seen BoJack, but still I was impressed with him in this one. This is the longest episode of the show, and I think that's because they're trying to set up the characters for the last 2 episodes. My only problem with the episode is that while Aaron Paul does a great job of voice acting, I didn't think Powerplex was that great of a character. I didn't find him intimidating, and Shows kind of treats him and everything about him as a joke. His character is just an absolute hater, and I think I was expecting a little more from him. Episode 7, What Have I Done? Holy fucking shit, this episode's amazing. This is definitely Stephen Ewan's best acting this season. Every mark was distinguishable, had a lot to their characters. This episode was a non-stop ride that didn't slow down until the credits. Obviously, I can't talk about this episode without mentioning the heartbreaking death of Rex Splode. His sacrifice was such a great scene. He gets picked up by one of the marks, and we know he probably can't get out of this when he delivers the line, "My entire goddamn skeleton, dickhead." Before exploding the mark, that was the perfect way for his character to go. The following scene showed a montage of characters and how the world has been affected by the marks while the Billie Eilish song Once the Party's Over or something, and it's such an impactful scene. Despite these sad scenes, this episode had no reason to be the funniest episode of the season. I mean, oh no, I don't want to not be alive, and the
I miss William.
like, come on, this shit was hilarious. The climax of this episode between Engstrom and Mark, their fight is amazing. Made me realize I kind of love Engstrom as a character and can't wait to see what he does next. His character just absolutely hates Mark, not as much as Powerplex obviously, but he's still the second biggest hater. But this scene found Mark's able to avoid going to all the portals and how he's able to force his way through the Engstrom's drones is just amazing. So in case it wasn't obvious, I love this episode, not as much as the season 1 finale, but there's just no way they top this episode, right?
Stand ready for my arrival, worm.
Episode 8. I Thought You'd Never Shut Up. Yes, this is easily the best episode of the show. The whole season people were talking about how good Conquest will be, but I didn't expect it to be that amazing. The fight was so intense, but where he's holding up Oliver and about to rip him in half, just straight up disturbing. Jeffrey Dean Morgan's voice acting was shockingly good. He was amazing in The Walking Dead, but I didn't think his talent with voice acting would be nearly as good. I wasn't completely sold in the last episode, but not once during this episode did I ever think of Negan while hearing his voice. And it was just terrifying if I hadn't said it at all. If I hadn't said it enough. I mean, the I'm So Lonely scene is the creepiest speech I've ever heard. This whole season's budget went to this episode, and it was one of the best action scenes I've ever seen. It was worth it. Very much worth it. And seeing Mark just bash his head into the skull of Conquest in a way to defeat him was shocking and is one of the craziest things I've seen. Just an amazing episode. Best episode of the show. One of my favorite episodes of television. Great episode. In case it wasn't obvious, I was a big fan of the season. My only problems were that Nolan and Alan weren't in it for the second half. And the lack of an overall storyline I thought kind of hurts it, because I don't feel like it's building up to anything instead of just things happening and the characters reacting. But still, love the season, big fan. I'd give it a 9 out of 10, best season so far. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, follow me on Letterboxd at #1Alex. And next week I'm covering Severance, so be excited about that.